I'm so glad to join all of you on this important topic of non-citizen voting. It is a critical way that we will build a multiracial democracy. We are going to first hear from Professor Alex Kesar, who is the author of The Right to Vote, The Contested History of Democracy in the United States, and a professor of history and social policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. There's that I'm probably going to butcher this Antonio Gramsci quote, right? It's the old world is dying, the new world is begging to be born. Now is the time of monsters.
Like, we know that there's going to have to be a lot of work that's going to happen in community. There's going to have to be a lot of coalition building here in Boston to make this happen. So I gave, like Beth mentioned, I gave my maiden speech on expanding the electorate and deepening democracy. So this idea of giving the municipal right to vote to people with legal status here in the city of Boston comes, as a part of a larger vision to deepen the democratic process by enfranchising immigrants, by lowering the voting age, by making sure that there's a ballot box in every jail. And I think that this expansion of what we consider the electorate is coming on the heels of, this progressive tide here in the city of Boston. It's coming on the heels of a majority BIPOC city council. It's coming on the heels of the mayor. We've just almost over 70% of voters in Boston voted to transition to an elected school committee versus an appointed school committee, which we've had. And so there is a yearning and there is an energy for more democracy, for deepening voter rights in the city of Boston. And I think that it's a natural reaction to what we're seeing happening in the country, right? We're seeing so many places move in the other direction that naturally our people are like, oh no, we have to dig our feet in. We have to strengthen protections. We have to give more power. We have to give more voice if we want to make sure that we don't end up in the places that we're seeing and end up in the same place, kind of like everything that we're seeing across the country. So there was an incredible amount of support for making this happen. Where we are right now in the process and in terms of how we're going to win this is going to be a lot of coalition building. Right now, there is a massive coalition in Boston and all across the state of Massachusetts that's working on getting driver's licenses for people who are undocumented. And that movement has gained so much traction. Similarly, right, 30 plus years of organizing, so much work has gone into it. And already people have been trying to use the fact that I have filed for, non-citizen voting to kind of say, see, if we do the licenses, then we're gonna want to vote, and then oh my, the immigrants are gonna, there's so much power. How can we give them more voice than what we've already been giving them? And so we are in a lot of strategic conversations with the coalition because ultimately we're all going to be working on this together about the timing and when this happens and how far along do we wait for what's happening at the state house to move before we move what's happening on the city council. And one of the big questions that we have in our office and that has been really exciting for me to explore and be in conversations with people about is whether or not we need a home rule petition and whether or not we should do it through home rule petition instead of doing it by ordinance here in Boston. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, so bear with me if there are people listening who are Boston politics, like, what do you mean? How could you do that? Well, the hearing order that I put forth is to restore municipal voting rights to people with legal status because we have already had this before. And so what's happening is that what I believe and what I have floated to other lawyers who are kind of looking into this a little bit is that there is a precedent that's already been set because our constitution and the language of our constitution has not changed from when we had non-citizen voting to when we do now. And so one could make the argument that citizen in the language does not mean someone who is a legal citizen of the United States, but actually means anybody who lives in the Commonwealth. Because the language was the same, similar. So we're playing with some fire, obviously. We're like trying to figure out if that's the best way. I don't know that that's going to be the best way to do it. We might end up with the home rule petition, in which case we're definitely going to want to collaborate with the coalition and make sure that the timing is correct. But I think that for me as an organizer, the most important thing is to have the conversation, to start from the bottom up, right? This was a part of my maiden speech, is that democracy doesn't come from the top, it comes from the bottom, right? And so if we're going to build a government from the bottom, then we build that momentum from the bottom. We build the momentum from the grassroots. We go furthest out into the margins and move our way inward instead of having the city council kind of pass it from the inside out. And so we have a big organizing strategy. We are going to have meetings with all of the folks who are a part of the license coalition. We're talking to unions, and we are going to build this external momentum. I believe that we have the votes on the city council. There's very little, there's some pushback, there are some concerns that people have. Some of the concerns that advocates had were particularly around whether or not people could accidentally vote in a federal election, which then would bar them from becoming citizens altogether. So there's the conversation around whether or not giving people with legal status would stop them from becoming citizens, because people become citizens only to vote, not to not live under the constant threat of deportation. So, they're like, "Oh, what's going to make people become citizens?" And I'm just like, "What do you mean?" um Wanting to stay here. And so that is one. The other one is whether or not people could accidentally vote in federal elections, then barring them from becoming citizens. And so we have been starting to have conversations with our elections department about what implementation would look like, a separate voter roll, right? Kind of like separate ballots that don't include the federal, to kind of like, so we're trying to like listen to the concerns that we've already heard with some of the work that has been done before I got on the city council, and really try to create a home rule petition and a process that feels good and that I know my colleagues will be more than happy to support. But like Beth said, we have majority BIPOC city councilors. I think that there are questions that people have about implementation that I think we can answer through the process, but I believe that we have the votes to move it to the state house, and we just need to make sure that we get organized there and that we can move it through the state house, however long it takes. But this is, you know, hard work. It's work that's going to take a really long time. I'm dedicated to it, whether I'm on the city council or whether I'm not on the city council. I think this is something that we need to do for our people. And I'm really excited about the possibility that this is going to open up for Boston with the elected school committee, with non-citizen voting, there's already a home rule petition drafted for lowering the voting age and allowing 16 to 17-year-olds to vote, which is being sponsored by some of my other colleagues. And so we are getting to work on expanding the electorate. We are getting to work to make sure that if government is going to be representative, particularly local government is going to be representative, then that means that everybody has to have a voice. And the way that you make sure that everybody has a voice is that you enfranchise the people who are most directly impacted by the decisions that we're making at City Hall. So we're excited to make it happen. I will definitely be reaching out to Annette. I will be reaching out to Councilor Caban. I want to, hear all about the process, the best practices. I'm getting ready for the lawsuit. Right? Like we're just kind of like, I want to learn, and I'm learning so much already hearing from you now and hearing some of the historical context as well. And yeah, happy to work together and collaborate to make sure that we make this happen. Yes, this came up, and we had the same conversation with one of my council colleagues. That was, and so there's the specifics, which for Boston particularly, and so to me, when I think about strategy and I think about communication, I think about the different answers that I give to different people, the different answers that I give to different people that will matter to them and will move them to be supportive of this. And so the answer that I give my people is not the same answer that I give people who are maybe more conservative or people who are right. Like there's an array of answers to give strategically as like an organizing strategy to move people who maybe are not on your side, to move them in that direction. So that is my caveat, is that I have many different responses based on who I'm speaking to. Similar to Councilor Caban, I look at this with a more expansive lens. I am your friendly socialist city council member here in Boston, and I enter this conversation with the all of my personal like socialist underpinnings, that you cannot actually have any kind of representative government if there are people in your society that do not have a voice, that have no entry point into the civic process. You can't actually have a democratic governance. And so anybody who is in any way, shape, or form interested in maintaining democracy, who believes in, you know, the impact that we can have in our local government, who believes in the US government and our structure, or who at least believes in the ideals in the way that they were created and that they were meant to function, to give, you know, to build a government from the bottom, that our government should be of the people and for the people. You can't have a government of the people and if some of the people do not have the right to participate ultimately. And so Boston is the home of the beginning of everything, for better or for worse. And so the conversation here has ultimately been very anchored in the Constitution and the patriotism that a lot of our people here feel. Um, that kind of that I think is a lot of what drives this question around like, oh well, what's gonna make people become, you know, how are we gonna get people to become citizens? And I again, this issue is very personal for me, so excuse me if I'm maybe getting too personal in terms of how I talk about this issue, but I come from a mixed status family and have had both one of my parents and a sibling be deported, and grew up in a neighborhood where ICE was knocking on people's doors when I was growing up and like asking for their papers. And so when someone says, oh, if we give them the right to vote, then why would they become citizens? I think about just like the terror that our people live in for not having legal status. And I always think, if you don't, like, you have to not know that that is the reality that our people are living here to think that voting is the only driver of this, right? If you are somebody who cares that people have to become citizens, I personally do not think that people need to be citizens, that they need to become legal citizens in order to be able to vote, which is why I'm moving this forward. If we are making decisions that impact people in our communities, then they should have a say in those decisions. If people in our communities are going to work every day and they're paying taxes, that we are making decisions in our budget on how to spend in our neighborhoods and in their communities, then they should have a say. They should get to elect their representatives. They should get to say what they want, who they want, and where, right? And if you have this core belief in democracy, if you have this inherent belief that democracy is good, that people should have a voice, that our decisions and our government is better when more of us are involved in it, then you should be supportive of this kind of measure, whether or not you think that it will deter people from becoming citizens, right? And so, again, different answers for different people. For my people are just like, hey, what about people becoming citizens? I'll be like, what about people becoming citizens? Right? I'm just like, in Boston specifically, we're trying to move this non-citizen voting for people who have legal status already. So people either have green cards or they have visas, and so they already have some kind of legal standing here in the country. Similarly, we're also a sanctuary city, and so we're trying to navigate like, what does all of that mean? If we are a sanctuary city, then why are we not enfranchising our immigrants? And so I think that my answer to that is always to bring it back to our values. What are our shared values as a city? What are our shared values as a city government? What are our shared values as a society? And to really bring home and drive this idea that this is in alignment with our values. This is in alignment with who we say we are, not just as the city of Boston, but this is in alignment with who we say we are as a country. This is in alignment with who we say we are in our constitution. This is in alignment with who we want to be in the world. And therefore, we should be supportive and push these kinds of measures.